Welcome, everyone. You're listening to iTalk 106.7 FM, the voice of the mountain. I'm your host, Janine Ford. So glad you're rolling with us this afternoon. I have Steve Carvajal, our good friend, and involved in all sorts of things politically and everything else around the state. He's on the phone today. Steve, how are you?
I'm doing great, Janine. It's just a wonderful day again.
Yes,
it is.
Wonderful
day.
Beautiful
Good
day.
Things keep happening every moment.
Yes, and we are hoping for some of this good. Of course, the fight has been against all the wind turbines, solar fields covering us up across the White Mountains and ruining our lands that a lot of people are concerned about. And there's been this recent article. This just happened recently. There's all sorts of headlines, and we don't know how many wind projects, but like Wind Power Monthly has that Trump blocks 228 wind projects over alleged national security issues. The Pentagon is delaying wind power development even on private land. That was 3 hours ago on CNN. Trump administration blocks U.S. wind energy projects in switch to natural gas and oil. That's The Guardian. And, of course, the New York Times. More than 168 wind projects stalled as Pentagon delays reviews. And we're all hoping for delays, pushbacks, anything to hold these off, because the big problem is they're going to put in a mini nuclear, which only sits on 5 acres, down the road. And then these will stand as giant tumors across our lands. So, yeah. And so with these headlines, what are you hearing about Trump's announcement?
Well, there's a lot to unpack in what we just talked about. So the first article I saw and you and I discussed was actually back on Monday. And the article was written by the American Clean Energy Association, or whatever they call it. And these guys are all pro-green energy. They are just the Marxists in sheep's clothing. So they tout themselves as green energy when they all know that it's not. But so on Monday, they actually issued an article out on the internet claiming that the Department of War was now blocking and going to effectively stop all new wind and production in the United States. So according to them, there'll be no more windmills built in the United States. And this is done because the Pentagon and the Department of War has some oversight over all of this. And when you think about it, it makes sense. And I don't know all the details myself, but I do know that there's a number of things that make this a national security issue. The first thing, obviously, as we've talked about many times on your show, is the fact that the components that everything is bought from China, and they have all sorts of horrible things inside these components that make up these wind turbines, such as they have listening devices. They can tap into our cell networks because they have all these things sit way up there in the air, and they catch all these airwaves. They can now use those as intelligence gathering devices. Every single windmill could be a device to gather intelligence and provide the Chinese. Second thing is they could actually turn off at their whim, at China's whim. They can just hit the stop switch, and every one of those wind turbines stops producing electricity. Same thing with the solar. But right now we're just going to focus on the wind. So those are two true security issues. And then there's another one that I've been reading about, and I'm still unclear on 100% of it, but I read partially about what it was part of it was about the ability for these wind turbines that sit up way in the air. And remember, we're talking about 160-foot blades roughly. So if you think about 3 blades on a wind turbine that are 160 foot long each, you effectively have close to 320 foot of spread, basically a football field, that as they're turning and a radar is trying to go through those, they're going to be given the radar and a reflection back every time. And even though the blades are made out of fiberglass and everything else, they're going to block a radar signal. So a national concern would be that a enemy aircraft could very easily sneak in at just above, because remember, you're looking at from a radar would sit down on the ground level, maybe be 20, 30 feet high, and it's shooting outward. And as it goes, the farther it goes out, the higher it comes off the surface of the Earth. And that's because of the parallax effect and also the fact that the Earth is curved. So all these windmills, when they're out there, are creating a false echo that an enemy could use to effectively penetrate our radar defenses and go in on that.
Yeah.
Plus, it could block serious, flight path issues. So all of this is being, examined. And I guess in the past, from what I was able to understand, Janine, I don't mean to ramble on, but in the past, any tower, including cell towers, microwave towers, anything else, that went above 100 feet above the Earth needed to get a clearance from the Department of Defense, or now the Department of War, that this will not become a problem for them. And you would routinely send in the form. They would do a cursory look, rubber stamp it, send it back to you, and you'd go build your towers. Well, now, because President Trump has declared that we don't want these things anymore, and let's face it, the majority of America does not want to have anything to do with these. So he has issued this edict that we're not going to do this anymore.
Right.
And so the Pentagon and the Department of War have decided, okay, we're no longer issuing those clearances. And without the clearance, you can't build. That's plain and simple.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether it's on private land, public land, state land, federal land, or, suspended above the earth in some magical fashion. You can't do it because it's now become a national defense issue. We've been praying for this to be the case, and this is now the case. It will be tested. I mean, we know that the green energy morons have lots of money that they stole from us, so they will be using this to get lawfare and try and reverse this. But I don't think they're going to make it. I honestly don't.
Well, and if he can block it long enough and make it as expensive enough for them and some of these foreign companies maybe to go away or back off for a while or something. And I know in the courts it'll be all legal fights and all kinds of garbage, but it's so worth it because they're going to take up thousands and thousands and thousands of acres. They're trying to put them on our state lands right now. Katie Hobbs is allowing that. And the sickest thing, the thing that has no common sense, is a mini nuclear is right around the corner. They're saying under like 5 to 10 years, okay? Now, the problem is these wind turbines stand there forever because nobody remediates them out of the ground, right? So, and they're not telling us about the groundwater surveys over the Coconino Aquifer, with each single windmill having 4,000 tons of rusting rebar, steel, lime, concrete, all the junk. And all the money grabbers that are just going to grab all the big money with this, they'll be long gone. They'll move away. And these lands will be destroyed for ranch land, for everything else. And it's super sad that they're just selling out. So if this can be delayed as much as possible, and we get a mini nuclear, maybe we can stem the tide of some of these,
Well, I believe that operations like what President Trump is doing right now is an answer to putting an end to this. This was never a realistic plan to provide reliable, cost-effective energy to Arizona or to the United States.
No, and they've failed in other countries. It's 50-year-old technology that is intermittent. They've even said the power is so intermittent and bad that we couldn't even dream of an AI center if we wanted one here, right? Because this power is not sufficient. But mini nuclears are, and they only sit on 5 acres of land, okay? And then you have all your land. I mean, it makes beautiful sense, but not as many people can grab the $98 billion that have been, from the subsidies. It's really sad. It's tragic. Trump sees it. And what I would encourage everyone to do is write to Andy Biggs, Eli Crane, all of your state. Yes, all of your state and national, would it be, and also your energy department, Trump administration, everybody you can write to and say, please shut down these wind turbines. What turbines are being shut down? All of these projects. And if it's over 100 feet, we know it would include all these projects in the White Mountains, hopefully, obviously, because those are, 700 and some feet?
Yeah, well, the pylons, the last I saw, were 654 feet to the top, which means that the actual generating motor sits slightly below them, maybe 10 feet, 12 feet below.
But the blades go to 700, right? Something like that.
But
The
then
blades.
you have the 160-foot blades on top. So you have essentially, let's just call it, let's say you got 640 feet plus 160. And so that thing sticks up there way in the air. And those things turning, as we've talked about, even though they look like they're turning slow to us because of our visual referencing, the fact is the tip of those blades are going in excess of 300 miles an hour.
Yes, and the eagles and the hawks that they bring down, they know how fast they're going. Yeah.
I mean, it wipes them out.
Yeah,
it truly does.
Yeah.
This is a no-win scenario, except for the people who are stealing all of our money. And let's never forget that the Biden administration put $360 billion into this type of work in the Inflation Reduction Act, and then allowed another $92 billion of hush funds that went out of the Department of Energy after Trump was elected, but before he was inaugurated. This is a horrible scam.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. And the worst part too is we were sold down the river by a Utah senator, a couple of Republicans in Iowa, everybody out of our state. They sold us down the river like Jody Ernst. And what was the senator in Utah that what was it?
No, it wasn't Mike Lee. It was the other guy. The guy that took over for Romney. I can't remember because his name sticks in my throat every time I try and say it.
Took over for Romney, yeah. And sold us down in the last 15 minutes on the Big Beautiful. They snuck it in the last 15 minutes, $98 billion. And the sick part is that was for across northern Arizona, and that's the money grab that they're grabbing. And so the Trump administration, they're trying any way, shape, or form. And Andy Biggs hates this. There's people that it's horrible. It's all foreign companies. It's every part is Chinese. It's the whole thing is just reeks, and it's not environmental. That's the biggest thing. No,
right. It's the stupid people, the lemmings of the world, follow that line. They go, "Oh, green energy, green energy." All you do is say that, and they just follow along.
Yep.
They jump in their little Teslas or Priuses, and they drive around with their earth shoes on and their hair tied back in a bun. That's the guys. The women look even worse. And as they do this, they follow this like a bunch of lemmings. They don't do any research. They just automatically assume that if it says green energy, it must be.
No, the left is very clever at labeling things. But the sad part is our so-called Republican leaders locally on our boards of supervisors gave us no protections. We showed them everything and how it's ruined Texas and Oklahoma. Within 5 miles of wind turbines, property values drop 50 to 80%.
Yep.
Okay, and people can do stuff on their own land, but when you're infringing on your neighbor to that extent to ruin their property values that close, that's infringement. It's huge, yes. And the thing is, that's why we have planning and zoning, but our counties totally failed us in that real AZ.
Well, we have to assume too that we only have two assumptions we can make out of this. Our county is either the dumbest people walking the planet, which is entirely possible. That these guys would be lucky to scratch their name in the dirt with a stick.
No, I don't think that's it. I think it's money. It's big money.
The other option would be, honestly, the other option has to be then that they did it knowingly. Now, we don't know why they did it knowingly. And it could be that they're just, partial lemmings following along somebody like the county attorney telling them, well, we don't have a choice. We don't have a choice. We don't have a choice. Well, that's never the actual case in America. There is billions of pieces of case law. People forget the difference between freedom and liberty. Freedom is when you're free to do anything. I could go and I could just beat my neighbor to death with a stick. That's freedom. But liberty is where he gets to say, no, Steve, you may have freedom, but you can't beat me to death with a stick. That you can't impose your will on me because you're free. And that's what our nation is designed for. Unfortunately, people confuse those issues because they're lemmings. They don't really grasp the whole idea. I know I'm probably pissing off all your clients, but or your listeners, but that's the truth. They don't do the investigations themselves. They don't take the time to understand any of the issues that they're dealing with. But here's a very, very simple thing that they can always remember. And the Republicans may not be the answer to your questions and to your problems. They're not every Republican's a good guy, and not every Republican can get everything done that we would like to do. However, it's a guarantee that every Democrat is the source of all your problems right now. And when we say Democrat anymore, we must absolutely substitute Democrat with communist, because that's what they've become. There is no difference now when you look back in history between what the Democratic Party of America is preaching, saying, and trying to accomplish than what the Maoists did in China or what the Bolsheviks did in Russia years ago. It is exactly the same. It just got a different label on it. And people need to wake up and realize this. This is a serious, serious deal.
Yeah, exactly. And it's super sad, but I think it's all, contrived. It's a gigantic push for all of this money. And whether the kickbacks, paybacks, however they're making the big bucks, that's what it has to do with, is all the big money, obviously. Because if they're not caring about the neighbors, we begged for setbacks for the public nuisance. We don't care what people are doing on their own land, but when it's towering over the top of your house and your property values are going to drop 50 to 80%. I love how we get this reaction from some of our county leaders. Oh, well, we did research. There's no research on this in our county. And you have no say within 300 feet. I mean, it's moronic. They can't look at the research in Oklahoma or Texas or other countries that have shut these down because they've ruined all their lands and they can't dig them back out. Nobody has the money to dig them out. So they're always landfills under the earth for time and all eternity to ruin all the lands. It's so sad. But we beg for setbacks, and the county officials sat right in here and said, oh, we think we can get a 1 mile setback. That didn't even happen. They moved the setback in on us. The 700 and some feet was from your property line. Now it's to your doorstep. So if the wind turbine falls, it'll miss your doorstep out a step. Aren't we lucky? Aren't we lucky?
Well, no, actually, I have to tell you, if the windmill fell towards your house now, the first third of it above the ground would actually crush your house. The rest of it's going to crush your neighbor's house because they're that big.
It's so sad. It's just, and it's sad that hundreds and hundreds of people went to all the county meetings and none of the county board of supervisors listened to any of us. And that's where it comes in. That you need to, be writing all your county board and just say, this is an emergency situation. You guys have done nothing to the county board of supervisors, planning and zoning, everyone. You did nothing to protect us. We want you to know that we have complained. We've done all we can. Your neck is on the line. And then we can maybe sue them personally, right? That's
right. And here's the thing. You remember when they had the listening sessions last year, and then Brian Layton came out and told everybody that, it was evened up. It was such BS. I mean, how he could do that with a straight face and go home and look at himself in the mirror. I'm sure he has house got no mirrors, because there's no way that human could look at himself in the mirror after lying to everybody multiple times about this, about the election integrity issues, and lately about the thing that I brought up to them in letters and in the call to the public about you have to get the operating companies on board before you issue a supplemental use permit, because if you don't, you are just wasting everything. You are giving a permit to a company that's only going to be here 2 years when you're building these. And so Lurch got up there, evidently. I have not seen it, so this is secondhand word, so full disclosure. But he gets up there in a Board of Supervisors meeting, I think it was 2 weeks ago, and he claimed, I was all wrong, and they've done their due diligence and everything else. No, they haven't. They're morons. And if that's their due diligence, I would love to sell these guys some swampland down here in southern Utah.
Yeah, I know.
Southern Arizona.
Yeah, I know. Okay, Steve Carvajal, we're out of time on our first segment. Can you hang on the phone with me?
Okay,
everybody, keep it right here. You're listening to iTalk 106.7 FM, the voice of the mountain.